Harriet was in an excellent mood. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and she had a quest to follow and some fellow princesses to save. The notion that failure would mean the eventual end of her own kingdom did not bother her. Failure in Harriet's world happened to other people. "This is just what we need, Mumfrey," she said. "I get to save the future kingdom, and it gets me out of the castle again." "Quirk," said Mumfrey bitterly. He was still sulking about his cupcake. They made good time down the road. In fact, they made entirely too good a time down the road. "I'm pretty sure we should be about a week away from the palace," said Harriet. "But that sure looks like it down there." "Quirk," said Mumfrey, which was quail for fairy work. "I don't trust it." "Me neither," said Harriet, "but here we are anyway." She rummaged around in Mumfrey's saddlebags and found 2 packages that she was pretty sure hadn't been there before. "Fairies just can't leave well enough alone, can they?" Mumfrey was thrilled. His box contained not 1, but 2 chocolate and birdseed cupcakes. Quirk! Harriet opened her package. Instead of cupcakes, Harriet's box contained a strange, slippery gray fabric. She shook it out. It looked like a cloak, but there were no clasps. It was a circle of fabric with a hole in the middle for her head and a large hood. "What the?" Harriet could tell, just by holding it, that it was magical. It made her whiskers tingle. She pulled it on. "It's a poncho of invisibility." A poncho of invisibility is not quite as good as a cloak of invisibility, but they're cheaper and easier to sew. Harriet had to readjust the folds several times to make sure that her feet didn't become invisible. "Well, I suppose this'll come in handy." "Quirk." "Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's probably weird to watch." Mumfrey scowled. He didn't like invisibility. There was a nasty bit when the poncho was partway on and partway off where he could see Harriet's innards. The princess was his best friend and he loved her very much, but he still didn't want a view of her giblets. "Right," said Harriet, stretching the poncho back in her saddlebags. "I get it. I'm supposed to go invisible and follow the princesses. No need to draw me a map or anything." It was, frankly, a better plan that she had been working on, which had involved disguising herself as a mouse princess. Hamsters do not look very much like mice, and Harriet was a terrible dancer. "Come on, Mumfrey," she said. "Let's get curse breaking." Chapter 5. Princess Harriet arrived at the castle and went immediately to the stables with Mumfrey. Stables tell you a great deal about how a kingdom is run. If they're warm and dry and cleaned out regularly, that's one thing. If they're filthy and badly lit, and the grain is full of mold and weevils, the odds are good you don't want to spend very long in that particular kingdom. It remained to be seen how the mouse kingdom would measure up. A hamster came around the corner, wiping his hands. "My apologies, traveler. I was seen to, He stopped. He stared at Harriet. Harriet stared at him. "Wilbur? Harriet? What are you doing here?" "A fairy sent me," said Harriet. "Curse on the princesses. Needs breaking, well, you know." She waved a hand in direction of the castle. "Why are you here?" "They needed a stable boy," said Wilbur. "All the other stable boys went off to try and fix the curse." "You're a prince," said Harriet. "Yeah, well, all the stable boys want to be princes. Maybe a prince should be a stable boy for a change." "Besides," he added, "Hetty the Hydra's laid an egg, and she's going to have a baby Hydra soon. And you know how much they eat. And the basement flooded again. You don't want to try breaking the curse yourself? You'd get half the kingdom. Wilbur shuddered. I can't even pay for the kingdom I've got. And I'd have to marry a princess, he said. I'm not getting married. I barely escaped marrying you. This might have been insulting, but Harriet felt quite the same way about it. Wilbur was a good friend, but not a boyfriend. She'd first met Wilbur while breaking her own curse, and she knew that his mother's kingdom was very poor. Wilbur had been able to fix the roof with the reward from breaking Harriet's curse, but money was still tight. He'd had a paper route, but being a stable boy probably paid better. She knew from listening to her father complain that basements were expensive to fix. It's wonderful you're here, said Harriet warmly. You're just the person I need. Tell me everything about the kingdom. Is the Mouse King a good man? Are the princesses unhappy? Can I leave Mumphrey here? How good is the bird seed? Wilbur held up his hands to forestall the questions. The stables are fine. The birdseed is excellent. I don't know much about the king, but I'll tell you everything I know. The king is weird. He gets really strange ideas. He was determined to have 12 daughters named after months. He had a list, and he had crossed the name off every time he had another daughter. Yikes, said Harriet. Being a princess was hard enough without being a name on somebody's list. Everything in the kingdom is the very best quality, but it's terrifyingly well organized. How so? We have to alphabetize everything. You put birdseed in front of alfalfa and you get yelled at. The king will only travel in carriages pulled by quail that match exactly. The footmen have to all be the same height and wear uniforms that match the curtains. I've heard the royal bodyguards are actually identical twins. And you'll see about the decor when you go inside. Wilbur shook his head. It's something. Harriet was extremely curious now, but she had one last question. What about the princesses? Wilbur shrugged. They're okay. Most of them never come down here. I see August sometimes. She has a quail. Mumphrey looked up, interested. A riding quail, not a battle quail, said Wilbur. That's okay. Mumphrey started out as a riding quail. He's learned to be a fearsome battle quail now, though. Quirk, said Mumphrey, which was quail for, I am very fierce. Does she seem like she's under a curse? Asked Harriet. The princess, not the quail. Does she act normal? Wilbur thought about it. Unfortunately, he didn't know many princesses. August didn't act like Harriet, but then again, who did? She seems angry, he said finally, and sad. Talk to her. You'll see.